My name is Rebecca. I'm 31 years old. I live and work in Chicago. But I never imagined that a trip I thought would be filled with warmth, love, and connection would unravel into something unrecognizable, something I couldn't undo. That winter morning, the snow fell heavily, as though the world was being erased in slow motion. The streetlights shimmered faintly, like distant stars fighting to be seen. I left at 6:01 a.m. The roads stretched endlessly before me, icy, unforgiving.
8 hours of driving toward a small town in Vermont, where my family had arranged an engagement party for my sister Caroline. The passenger seat held a wedding cake, meticulously wrapped in white paper, its sweetness contained in a delicate box. It was a 2-tier red velvet cake, smothered in cream cheese frosting, adorned with tiny sugar flowers. A symbol of my love, my sacrifice. Caroline had once called it my high school dream, the cake that would represent everything I'd wished for her. I had paid extra for it to be freshly made that morning, not out of convenience, but because I loved my sister enough to give up comfort for her smile. I wore a fitted black dress beneath my beige coat, a carefully constructed look of calm. Somewhere along the way, I had changed into heels in a gas station restroom, the cold tiles beneath me offering no comfort. Each time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I whispered to myself, "I'm doing this for Caroline. She's worth it." When my car finally crept up the long driveway to the estate hosting the party, the house stood before me like a dream materialized. Glowing, warm yellow lights wrapped around the trees, ribbons of silver and white fluttering in the wind. It looked like a fairy tale. I remember whispering, almost to myself, "Caroline won't forget me after this." My own words felt fragile, as though the air might swallow them whole. The valet took my keys without a word, but the look in his eyes, surprised, distant, made my stomach drop. He raised an eyebrow as I stepped out of the car, cake box in hand. "Are you with a wedding? Catering?" he asked, polite, but like he didn't care. I forced a smile. "No, I'm the bride's sister." His nod was all that followed, a signal that the conversation was over. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of vanilla candles, and soft violin music played in the background, but no one greeted me. No hugs, no welcoming smiles. Just a few scattered guests, their eyes flicking in my direction, only to dart away, as if I were a stranger intruding on a private gathering. The cake box felt heavier now, like it had taken on the weight of my expectations. I walked deeper into the hall, every step feeling like it stretched time. There she was, Caroline, standing beside Ethan in her ivory satin dress, laughing with her friends, until her gaze found me. Her smile vanished in an instant. "You actually came?" The words hung in the air between us like an accusation, her eyes narrowing, as if she could barely believe it, as if she hadn't even expected me to try. I stood, frozen, caught in the tension between my love for her and the cold reception she handed me. 8 hours through heavy snow? I said, trying to keep my voice light. Of course, I came. She didn't take the cake box, didn't step closer. She just said, "I didn't think you'd come, with the weather and all." Her voice was dismissive, almost as though she were speaking to an acquaintance she barely knew. I set the cake down beside a tray of macarons, my fingers trembling as I adjusted it. "Well, it's your special day." Behind her, one of the bridesmaids whispered loudly, "She's not on the guest list, right?" The words cut through the air like a knife, a cruel reminder that I was more of an afterthought than a sister. Caroline glanced at the bridesmaid, but didn't respond. She just turned and walked away, Ethan by her side. I stood there, alone, in my damp coat among strangers. They moved around me like the wind, indifferent, each person brushing past me as if I were invisible.
That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't even a forgotten one. I was a name crossed out, a mistake erased long before I'd arrived. I looked for my mother. If anyone could understand, if anyone might see the effort I'd made, it was her. I found her near the fireplace, the deep red velvet of her dress contrasting sharply with the chill in the room. She held a glass of white wine, poised, ready for conversation. When I approached, she set her glass down and didn't meet my eyes. "Rebecca," she said softly, as though she feared someone might overhear. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "Why not?" I asked, the words coming out more calmly than I felt. She cut me off before I could say anything more. "Let's not make this complicated. Today is Caroline's day. Don't turn it into something else." My grip tightened on my purse strap, a surge of frustration bubbling up. "What do you mean?" Her gaze finally met mine, but her eyes were as cold as the winter outside. She forced a faint smile, polite, calculated. "Sometimes kindness is all about timing." Her words echoed in my head as I moved through the hall. Soft jazz filled the background, but it didn't reach me. It was as if I was walking in a world where no one saw me, no one cared. In the center of the room was a photo display of Caroline and Ethan, each picture carefully chosen, a testament to their perfect love, walking hand in hand through Central Park. And I, the sister, the one who had sacrificed so much, was a shadow in the background, forgotten before I'd even arrived. Caroline stood there, holding a bouquet of tulips in a white sweater, her smile radiant, a moment frozen in time. Ethan, kneeling by the river, proposing, his face lit with joy. Everything was perfect, everything except me. Not a single picture of us. Not one. The photographs that adorned the walls, the slideshow that flickered on the screen, all of it was her life, her triumphs, her memories, and I wasn't part of any of it. I moved toward the reception table, where the guest list and seating chart were proudly displayed. My fingers brushed against the ivory paper, scanning name after name, each one a reminder of the people Caroline had chosen to be a part of her life. College friends, distant acquaintances, even our grandmother, who she had seen twice at a charity gala, but not me, not Rebecca Collins. A staff member caught my eye, her smile gentle, almost too sweet for the situation. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I pointed at the seating map, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "I'm the bride's sister. I don't see my name." She checked the list, her eyes moving quickly down the paper. "Rebecca Collins?" She hesitated, a slight frown creasing her forehead. "Maybe you're an unexpected guest." "No," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm family." Her nod was slight, almost apologetic, but she didn't say anything more. She stepped back, leaving me standing there in the sea of unfamiliar faces. The sounds of joyful laughter and well-wishes swirled around me, but it was all muffled, distant, like I was standing in a fog. My heart was unraveling, one thread at a time. I found an empty chair near the dessert table, but as I was about to sit, another staff member approached. "Sorry," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "That seat is for the DJ's assistant." I nodded, pressed my lips together in a tight line. "I understand." I turned away, feeling the weight of the cold air around me, the distance between my heart and the celebration. I walked to a dim corner of the room, where the laughter felt even farther away, like the world had taken another step back from me. I poured myself a glass of water, holding it with both hands as though the cold liquid might somehow wash away the emptiness that had settled in my chest. From where I stood, I could see the slideshow on the giant screen. Pictures of Caroline's life.
Ribbons in her hair as a child, her winning the high school dance award, her graduation, a photo from her travels in Italy. Each frame was a perfect moment. Each moment except the one I had hoped for, the one I thought I could be a part of. I wasn't in any of them, not even once. It was as if I had never existed in her world at all. A wave of cold washed over me. Not from the snow outside, but from the crushing realization of what I once called family. I stepped into the coat room, not to take off my coat, but to find a sliver of air. A moment to breathe. The small, dimly lit room with its crowded hangers became my sanctuary. The only place where I could escape the storm of glances, the coldness that surrounded me. On a side table, there was a tray of bridesmaid gifts. 10 tiny boxes, each tied with a delicate pink ribbon. I glanced at the names written on the tags. Julia, Erica, Claire, Hannah. Mine wasn't there. It wasn't a mistake. They had made sure of it. I sank into a velvet chair nearby, instinctively reaching for my phone. The screen lit up. No missed calls. No new messages. I opened my messaging app, desperate for some form of connection, some thread to cling to. And then I saw it. A new group chat. Caroline's dream team. I frowned. I didn't remember joining it. Maybe someone added me by accident. I scrolled through the messages, the words suddenly sharp and unforgiving. The last message, sent 3 hours ago by Julia, one of the bridesmaids, read, "Everything's pretty and perfect, just like we planned." Above it, earlier texts scrolled by, filled with casual conversation. And then came the one that shattered me, the one that cut through the facade like a knife. Caroline had written, She doesn't fit the image. I'll just say the list is full. Having her in the wedding photos would be awkward. Below it, a cringing emoji and a shaking head gif. I don't know how long I stared at it, the words feeling like they were etched into my chest. Caroline didn't just forget me. She had planned to leave me out. And the worst part was, I never suspected a thing. I left the group chat, my fingers trembling as I slid my phone back into my purse. It wasn't the cold that made my hands shake anymore. It was something much worse. A deep, painful realization that everything I'd believed in had been a lie. I stepped out of the coat room, my feet moving without purpose, only driven by the need to escape. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, the laughter and the chatter pressing in from all sides. I wandered into a narrow hallway between the kitchen and the staff area, desperate for an exit. There, under the dim yellow lights of the ceiling, trays of untouched food waited to be served. But I didn't see any of it. I was about to turn back when I heard laughter, familiar laughter, from behind a cracked door. My heart stopped. It was Caroline's voice. I still can't believe she actually drove all the way here. Who does that? And then Hannah's voice joined in. A whole road trip just to bring what? A homemade cake that looks like it's from a discount store. Laughter burst out. I froze, every muscle in my body locked in place. Caroline's voice dropped, but it still cut like ice. If she hadn't come, everything would have been perfect. I was hoping the weather would keep her away. Claire's voice chimed in, joining in the laughter. The words blurred into one, but they didn't need to make sense to me. The damage was already done. Maybe she would have spun out on the road or something. That way we'd have an excuse to be sad and still enjoy the peace. The words didn't just float in the air. They exploded, sharp and unforgiving, an eruption of laughter that rattled me to my core. It wasn't just the sound. It was the familiarity, the cold ruthlessness of it,
The kind of laughter I had heard my entire childhood, and back then, I hadn't known who it was aimed at. Now I did. I staggered back, my hand instinctively reaching for the wall to steady myself. The floor beneath me felt like it tilted, not because I was losing my balance, but because the entire world had just collapsed. They didn't think I could hear them. That was what hurt the most. What people say behind your back, that's the truth. They don't hide what they really think. And the truth was, I had never been wanted here. Never truly been part of the family. I turned away, not knowing where I was going. But for the first time in my life, I knew something with brutal clarity. I wasn't mistaken. I wouldn't excuse them anymore. My blind hope had been shattered, and now, all the pain I had buried deep inside bubbled to the surface. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to forgive and return to the hall of smiling faces that hadn't cared about me from the start. I didn't need to stay. There was no reason to breathe in a place where every breath made my chest ache. I slipped out quietly through the side door near the kitchen, my long coat still streaked with the snow from the morning drive. The cold wind greeted me, biting at my face, trying to wash away every illusion I had carried with me. But the coldest thing wasn't the weather. It was the silence from the people I had once called family. I sat in my car for what felt like hours. The engine was off, but my mind kept racing. Thoughts, images, memories, the noise of it all trapped inside my head, demanding answers. My phone lit up with a new message. It was from my mother. Just one line. "Rebecca, don't make a scene." I stared at the text, my mind blank, as if the words were written in a language I could no longer understand. Above it, my earlier message to her still sat. "Mom, I'm on my way. Hope you'll all be surprised." No reply. I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy left to explain or defend something that should never have needed explaining. I just wanted to be there for my sister, to show up for her like I always had. I sat there, alone in the car, as the golden lights from the estate across the road faded into the night, swallowed by the darkness. I didn't drive home. I booked a room at a cheap motel 30 minutes away. My dress was wrinkled, makeup smeared from the countless attempts to hold back tears. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check social media. I just lay there, staring at the stained ceiling, letting the memory of the evening drain me, one breath at a time. I felt hollow, like I was fading out of existence, piece by piece. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. My head spun, thick with the lack of sleep. When I opened Instagram, the first post was from Caroline. A heavily filtered photo, Caroline surrounded by her bridesmaids, holding a champagne glass. Soft light bathed her satin dress, twinkling lights glittering in the background. The caption read, "A perfect night with all the people I love most." I wasn't in the photo, no tag, no mention, no thank you, not a single trace that I had ever been there. I scrolled through the comments. "Caroline, you look so beautiful. Everything looks amazing. Wish I had been invited." No one asked about me. No one asked about the wedding cake, the one I had driven over 400 miles to deliver. No one noticed that I had vanished without a trace. The next message came from my cousin, Julia. "Rebecca, last night wasn't easy, but I hope you understand that party wasn't the place to ask for attention." Then, another message from my mother, this time in the family group chat. "She's going through a rough patch. Let's be patient. Don't add fuel to the fire." I read it over and over, each word sinking deeper into my chest, the weight of their revisionist history suffocating me. Rough patch. They were rewriting the story. A new version of Rebecca, the unhinged one, the disruptive one, the embarrassing one. No one mentioned what I had heard behind that kitchen door. No one asked why I had left in silence. No one cared if I was okay. A message from an old friend, someone I hadn't heard from in nearly 3 years, pinged on my phone. Heard the engagement party got awkward. Caroline said you caused a scene and disappeared. You all right? I didn't reply. I didn't need to.
I understood, finally, that I hadn't just been erased from the guest list. I had been erased from the narrative altogether. My existence excised like a glitch in a perfect picture. Just an extra, easily cut to preserve the illusion of perfection. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and titled it The Truth. In it, I saved photos of the wedding cake receipt, the untouched cake box on the kitchen counter, the snow-covered driveway from yesterday. I saved screenshots of the group chat between Caroline and her friends, but even then, I didn't know exactly why I was doing it. Perhaps I wanted to hold on to something real, even if no one else could see it. Maybe one day, if someone ever asks me, was it really that bad? I want to be able to say, yes, these are the things they'll never tell you. They could erase me from the party. They could crop me out of the photos. They could pretend I was never there. But I wasn't going to let them define me with silence anymore. I spent all Sunday afternoon in my small Chicago apartment, the soft light from the window casting shadows across the kitchen table, where I laid out everything others had chosen to ignore. My laptop sat open, the screen glowing with a folder titled The Truth, a digital collection of everything no one wanted to acknowledge. The folder held the photographs and receipts that told the real story. A photo of the red velvet wedding cake I brought, still sealed in its silver box, untouched, never opened. A receipt for over $200 paid in advance for the bakery to prepare it fresh that morning, an investment I had made, with love, with care, to honor my sister. There was also a selfie I took in front of Caroline's estate, my hair tangled from the snowstorm, my coat soaked through, still holding the cake like a precious gift. My smile forced, but full of hope. I opened Instagram. The first post was of the cake outdoors, snow blanketing everything around it. The gold ribbon stood out against the white, the caption simple, yet powerful. Not everything we bring is appreciated. That doesn't mean it has no value. The second post was of the receipt screenshot from the email confirmation, the note clear and final. 2-tier red velvet wedding cake to be delivered Saturday morning for Caroline Collins. The third was a photo from inside my car, the windshield caked with snow, the world outside blurred white, like the sky itself had tried to stop me. But I came anyway. I turned off the comments. Not because I feared conflict, but because I didn't need permission to tell my story. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. Then I opened my email. Recipients: Mom, Linda Collins, Aunt Martha, Caroline Collins. Subject: the wedding cake. I kept it short and to the point. Attached is the receipt for the wedding cake I ordered, paid for, and brought on Saturday. The cake was never opened, never mentioned. I don't need thanks. I just want you to see the truth. I attached the 3 photos and hit send. Mom replied in less than 5 minutes. Rebecca, this isn't helping. You're making things worse. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new message, this time addressed to the PR department of Lockridge Financial, where Ethan, Caroline's fiancé, worked. I wasn't sure if they'd care, but I knew one thing. They cared deeply about reputation. They stayed far away from personal scandals that could affect investor confidence. I didn't write much. I simply attached 2 files, a screenshot of the family group chat where my mother had called me unstable, and Caroline had mocked me for turning everything into a tragedy, and a recording from that night, the one where Caroline and her friends laughed about the idea of me getting into an accident on the way. The voices were clear, sharp, unmistakable. The subject line: information that may be relevant to company image. No caption, no explanation. I left it for them to decide.
When it was done, I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still shaking, not out of fear of their reaction, but because, for the first time, I had done it. I had pushed back. No yelling, no pleading to be included, just the truth, laid bare, to see if they'd still pretend not to know. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Rebecca, this is Lindsay from PR at Lockridge. Thank you for sharing the information. We are reviewing the content and will proceed according to company policy." I didn't know what would happen next, but the fact that they responded, something my own family hadn't done, was enough to tell me this time they couldn't bury it. That night, Caroline posted an Instagram story, a short video clip of flickering candles with text across the screen. "There's always someone who can't stand to see you happy. No name, no tags." But everyone knew exactly who it was about. I smiled and closed my phone. I didn't need to reply with words anymore. This time, they had written the play, and I was simply the one who pulled back the curtain, letting the audience see what had been hidden backstage. On Wednesday morning, as I was making coffee, a text popped up from Monica, an old childhood friend who still lived near Caroline. "Did you hear the family meet and greet dinner got canceled? Ethan said he needs to reevaluate everything." I stood still in the kitchen, the smell of coffee doing nothing to mask the tremor in my wrist. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt that the truth had finally knocked on the right door. The weekend brunch at Aunt Martha's house went ahead as planned, a little gathering to smooth things over, as Mom had put it. I was invited reluctantly, like a side dish no one really wanted, just included because the hotel had already added it to the menu. I arrived 10 minutes late, not because of traffic, but because I wanted to see every face as I walked in. To know who was waiting for me to speak and who was praying, I'd stay silent. Caroline sat at the center of the long table, wearing a cream knit dress, lightly made up, but the fatigue beneath her mascara was impossible to hide. Ethan wasn't there. Mom offered a stiff smile, and a breath of relief escaped her. I nodded silently and took my assigned seat at the far end of the table, next to a vase of evasive white tulips. Caroline spoke first, as always, her voice sweet, with a hint of reflection. "This past week has been an emotional journey. I think we've all seen where the strength of family truly lies." Heads nodded around the table. Everyone knew what she meant, and who she meant. I set my water glass down, wiped the rim with a napkin, and looked up. "I'd like to say a few words, too." Caroline paused, her eyes narrowing. "Rebecca, today isn't..." "Just 1 minute," I said, calm but firm. I took out my phone, opened the saved audio clip, and hit play. Caroline's voice rang out clear, but ice cold. "She doesn't fit the image. I'll just say the list is full. Having her in the wedding photos would be awkward." Laughter followed, then Julia's voice. "Maybe she'll spin out on the road. That way we'd have a reason to be sad. And peace, too." The room was full, but it was completely silent. Only their own words played back through the small speaker, each sentence like a verdict. Caroline turned pale. My mother set down her glass, her composure gone. Aunt Martha covered her mouth. No more nods, no more polite smiles. I stopped the recording after 10 seconds. "Enough. That's what I heard at Caroline's engagement party," I said, my voice oddly steady. "I thought I came with a gift, with love. Instead, I was just an inconvenience to be hidden." Caroline stood, her face flushed. "Rebecca, that was a joke," I interrupted. "A careless moment or a plan all along? No one answered." I looked straight at my mother, then at Aunt Martha. If I didn't have that recording,
Would any of you believe me? My mother said nothing. Her eyes drifted away, as if she could find something else to focus on. Does Ethan know, Caroline? Aunt Martha asked, clearly uneasy. Caroline swallowed hard. He needs time to think. I nodded. Good. He should know who he's marrying. I didn't wait for a response. I stood gently, pushed my chair back, and looked around the table at the faces that had once turned away at the party. Now they watched me, like they were seeing me for the first time. As I walked out the door, Aunt Martha followed me. She touched my arm and whispered, "You didn't just stand up for yourself. You reminded this family that the truth still deserves a voice." I nodded, stepping into the bright morning sun. Above, the clouds parted, revealing a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. For the first time in years, I felt no need to explain myself. This time, they had said it all. A week passed since that brunch, and my phone remained silent. No apologies, no check-ins. Just a few Instagram notifications from old friends liking the post of the wedding cake I had brought through the snowstorm, and a handful of quiet messages from people who, like me, had once been pushed aside by their families. I didn't try to reach out to Caroline. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt empty, as if a long chapter had closed with no tragic ending. No need for resolution, just done. On Friday night, while folding laundry, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Caroline. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the decline button, then stopped. Finally, I set the phone on the table, hit accept, and put it on speaker. "Rebecca?" Her voice was hoarse. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but please, just once." I said nothing. I was wrong," Caroline continued, each word sounding like it was fighting its way through icy water. "My whole life, people compared me to you. You were independent, smart, never needed anyone, and I always had to work harder just to be seen." Caroline's voice was raw, the words a confession that shook me to my core. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. I never thought I'd hear this from her. "I was jealous of you," she admitted plainly. "Even at my own engagement party, I felt scared. Scared of how Ethan looked at you when you walked in. Scared of people praising you for driving through a snowstorm. Scared that once again, I'd be the shadow." I closed my eyes. The familiar ache returned. Not because of her words, but because I had once wished to hear them so much sooner. The weight of that silence, the years of wondering, were suddenly unbearable. But that doesn't excuse what I did. Caroline's voice cracked, her admission coming like a slow, painful release. It was selfish and cowardly. "I left you off the guest list, laughed behind your back, then spun a story that made you the problem. I know nothing can undo that." I exhaled slowly, the air thick in my lungs. "You're right. Nothing can undo it." The words felt heavy, but they weren't angry, just a quiet acceptance. But I also don't want to carry those scars forever. There was a pause, the kind that stretches time. Then, barely above a whisper, Caroline asked, "Can you forgive me?" I thought about it. Forgiveness didn't mean starting over. It didn't mean stepping into the same circle again. "I don't hate you, Caroline," I said, honestly. "But I can't go back to the way things were. Some relationships need to end for both sides to grow." Caroline didn't respond. We just sat in silence, breathing on opposite ends of a broken bridge. Then she said goodbye. Not tearful, not dramatic, just an ending. It was the kind of goodbye that arrived exactly when it needed to. The next day, I went to the local bakery, the same one where I had ordered the red velvet cake. The shop owner remembered me and smiled when she saw me walk in. "What'll it be this time?" she asked. I smiled gently. "Just a small cake, vanilla frosting, simple design, no message, just sweet and honest." That evening, I placed the cake in the center of my kitchen table, lit a small candle, not for a birthday, not for an anniversary, but just to mark a moment when I chose myself over trying to please anyone else. I poured a cup of hot tea, sliced a piece of cake, and sat by the window, watching light snow fall outside. In my hand, my phone was already open to a draft. After countless edits, I was finally ready to post the final message. To anyone who's ever felt like the extra in their own family story, you're not wrong. You are not too sensitive. You're just being real, and that has never been something to apologize for. I once walked through a snowstorm to bring the best of myself, and I left empty-handed. But I'm no longer sorry, because now I know family isn't made by blood. It's built on mutual choice. I've finally chosen me. I hit post. No waiting, no fear, just relief. Like setting down a weight I'd carried for too long. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Not out of anxiety, not out of lingering sadness, but simply because there was nothing left to hide from anymore. The winter light slipped gently through the curtains, softer than I expected. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window, looking out at the thin sheet of ice still clinging to the street. I wasn't thinking much about what Caroline had said the night before. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I no longer needed to keep it in my head like a wound. For the first time in years, my mind felt like it had room to breathe. A few hours later, I received a message from Melissa, a former coworker. "I read your post. I went through something similar with my cousin. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Another message from someone I'd known in college. "You're not alone. Family isn't always the safest place." All morning, my inbox filled with messages from people who had once been silent when I needed to be seen. Now, when I no longer waited for anyone's approval, my voice had somehow helped others feel seen too. It was something I never expected. My story, which had once felt small and misplaced, was now reaching so many. And I realized something. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's quiet, erasure. The silence from Caroline, from Mom, from those who saw me sitting alone at that party and turned away. It wasn't because they didn't know what was happening. They knew. They just chose to ignore it. But I wasn't silent anymore, and I wasn't going to let them erase me again. It was because they chose not to acknowledge me, because I made them uncomfortable, because I didn't fit the narrative they wanted to present. For so long, I had been silent, afraid that if I spoke up, I'd be labeled as the troublemaker, the too emotional daughter, the one who ruined the mood. But the truth is, that so-called peace was never meant for me. The moment I spoke, the moment I hit post, played the audio, and sent the email, that's when I stopped being the victim in someone else's story. I became the one writing it. Telling the truth doesn't make you bad. It sets you free. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will applaud. Some family members quietly unfollowed me. They didn't message, didn't call. But for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to. I didn't need anyone to confirm I was right. I knew. I wasn't wrong. That afternoon, I walked to the bakery, not to buy another cake, but to thank the owner for the quiet kindness she showed when my own family couldn't. She smiled when she saw me, and she didn't ask questions. She just said, "When you first came in, I had a feeling that cake wasn't just for celebration." I nodded. "It wasn't," I said. It was the last gift I brought to a door that had already closed. On the walk home, snow began to fall gently, steadily. Not harsh,
not bitter, just soft. It was laying down a fresh layer of clean white over everything, covering the past, covering the old hurt. I stopped in the middle of the street, tilted my face toward the sky, and thought to myself, not every storm comes to destroy. Some come only to clear the sky. And I had walked through a storm like that. That night, I pulled out the old journal I had set aside when I was 26. I turned to the first page where I had once written, maybe if I'm gentle enough, they'll let me stay. I smiled softly and gently crossed out that line with a blue ink pen.
Then I wrote a new one just below it. No one has the right to keep or cast someone out if that person has chosen to walk forward in their own truth. I closed the journal, turned off the lights, and left a small candle burning quietly in the corner of the kitchen. And for the first time in a very long while, I slept deeply. No dreams, no jolts awake, no voices echoing in my mind. Just peace. Not from forgetting, but from finally facing everything and letting go. Rebecca's story isn't just about leaving a party. It's about returning to herself. It's about walking away from someone who always tried to be accepted by a family that never truly listened. She found the courage to speak up, face the pain, and release old expectations. Rebecca shows us that the truth, even when hard to hear, always deserves to be spoken. And sometimes, the strongest thing we can do isn't to forgive, but to no longer need someone in order to be at peace. What do you think about Rebecca's choice? Would you dare to speak up if your own family shut you out? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.